A portion of this video is brought to you by Surfshark. One of the benefits of a factory-built home is that the insulated wall panels are assembled in a climate-controlled facility. However, they still need to get assembled on site, and that's when Mother Nature can take her revenge. Now, my factory-built house started getting raised on site at the beginning of January, and the New England weather did not want to cooperate, which got me a little worried about water soaking the insulation inside the wall panels. And to say I was concerned would be a pretty accurate statement, but it was very cool learning and seeing how it comes together. So how did it go assembling a factory-built home in the freezing rain and snow? And was the team able to achieve passive house level airtightness? That was the thing I was holding my breath on. I'm Matt Ferrell. Welcome to Undecided. In case you haven't seen my previous videos on my home builds, my wife and I are building out an energy-efficient factory-built home with the goal of achieving net zero energy, which means the house will produce as much energy over the course of a year as it uses. To achieve that, you need to come at the problem from two sides. One is to build with energy efficiency in mind for insulation value, air tightness, HVAC, and appliance choices. And the second is solar panels and a home battery for energy production. And the more energy efficient the home, the less solar panels you'll need. Another factor is if you're going all electric like I am, your electricity use is going to go up with EVs, electric heating and cooling, hot water. You get the idea. So going as energy efficient as you can will help blunt that increase in electricity that's needed. My home was designed and built by the company Unity Homes, whose factory is located in Keene, New Hampshire. In the last video I published about this, I had a tour of the factory and saw my insulated wall panels being built. I'll include a link to that in the description if you want to see that. The short story is that they build homes with insulated wall panels that take everything from thermal bridging to air tightness into account. Now I'll touch on that in a bit, but at the end of the day, the wall panels will have an insulation value of R35 and the attic space will be over R50. It may even go up to R60. And the windows are triple glazed European style tilt turn windows, which I'm crazy excited for. Now just for comparison, the climate zone I live in requires R20 for the walls, I believe. Now the higher the number, the better. Now, all the timber for the house is pre-cut in the factory for easy installation on site, and the wall panels have the exterior doors and windows pre-installed. Reduced waste and costs are some of the benefits to this approach because they're buying supplies in bulk that can go across multiple projects. Also, the climate-controlled factory means not having to worry about rain, sleet, or snow affecting production. That is until it comes to raising the house on site, and I'll get to that in detail in just a second. The last benefit is time for the final assembly. Getting the shell of a house raised is much faster than a typical stick-built house. While Unity was building out the parts for my home, my local contractor was prepping the site, digging the foundation, and getting everything ready for Unity's arrival. Ideally, my wife and I were hoping for all this to happen in the fall, but the timing just didn't work out. So here we are in January with the house raising. And the Unity team that was on site was made up of 4 guys plus a crane operator. The day before the crane arrived, they spent time prepping the site and getting everything ready. The day the crane arrived is when I arrived on site and camped out in my Tesla, and fun fact, it does not take a lot of battery energy to keep the car warm and comfortable all day. So I actually had a nice, quiet mobile office setup, making it easy to jump in and out of the construction site. A perk of owning an AV I was not expecting. On the first day of raising, the weather looked worse than it was. It was wet and misty in the morning, but mainly overcast during the day. For New England, it was actually a surprisingly warm winter day in the mid 40 degrees Fahrenheit range, which is about 4 to 6 degrees Celsius. And there was an interesting choreography to how they assembled the house. They started installing the walls from the back right corner of the house towards the front left corner of the house, closest to the crane. And before setting down each wall, they applied a special piece of tape that acted as a gasket between the foundation and the wall, as well as between each wall panel. Now, after setting the wall panel and ensuring it was located precisely, they drilled holes into the foundation and bolted it into place. This dance between the crane operator and the team continued until all the walls were set for the main living space of the house, with the exception of the garage. Day 2 continued with more light rain and overcast weather as they focused on finishing out the garage walls. And after that, they moved on to the roof trusses, which took a decent chunk of time. When I had the factory tour, Jay Lapel, who runs the factory, was playfully teasing me for not getting the insulated roof panels instead of going with standard trusses. We did that to save on costs, but I get why he was pushing that after seeing the assembly. The insulated roof panels are assembled just like the wall system, so it's much faster to finish out the house versus having to set so many individual trusses. That said, they've got this down to a science, and by the end of the day, they were able to get the main living area completed. But this is where things took a turn weather-wise. It wasn't great throughout this point, but it was nothing that made me worry. But it was day 3 where I started to worry because of the weather. But before I get into that, I'd like to thank Surfshark for sponsoring this portion of today's video. I always recommend using a VPN when using public Wi-Fi, but VPNs can be very useful even when you're at home. A lot of online services use some pretty sophisticated commercial tracking and machine learning to apply very targeted advertising. A VPN can protect you from some of that. Surfshark's Clean Web does a great job blocking ads, trackers, and malicious websites, making it safer to use the internet even at home. And you can even make it look like your IP address is coming from a completely different country. This can come in handy if you want to stream a video that's only available from a specific location. And one of the best parts of Surfshark is that it's easy to set up on all of your devices, whether that's iPhone or Android, Mac or PC. Surfshark is the only VPN to offer an account to use with an unlimited number of devices. Use my code to get 83% off plus 3 extra months for free. Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it out for yourself. Links in the description below, and thanks to Surfshark and to all of you for supporting the channel. Now back to why I got a little concerned at this stage of the house raising. Now, leading into day 3, which was Friday, a mix of freezing rain and snowstorm was moving through Massachusetts. And while it wasn't dumping a foot of snow, it was concerning. I was expecting that the team was basically just going to kind of prep the site and then call it a day for the weekend and then come back on Monday to finish everything, but they're still doing work today to try to get up all the roof trusses. So they're plugging away in the rain. You can see in the video that it was coming down at a good clip at one point. My main concern was water penetration into the insulated wall panels. Now, the logical side of my brain knew this probably wasn't a real issue to worry about and that Unity builds in this kind of weather a lot. The other side of my brain, the lizard brain, was on the path to panic. Not full-on panic mode, but just enough to get me worried. I emailed our project manager at Unity, his name's Rob, and he's awesome by the way, and he talked me through why my lizard brain needed to shut up. First thing is that these wall panels are only slightly vulnerable to water intrusion in this kind of weather on the top plate of the wall. But what the team had done the night before the snow and freezing rain was to tape off areas of concern as a temporary protection. In the morning, they took pieces of the plastic wrap that was used to protect the panels for shipping and taped those along the top of the wall panels and trusses, just as an extra layer of protection. Even if some water did intrude into the panel, the walls are designed to breathe and let moisture escape. It's not a sales pitch for a specific brand of product, but they use zip sheathing and densely packed cellulose, which can breathe and dry itself out. Now, according to Unity, they've only had an issue in a very heavy downpour. If there's any kind of concern about moisture, they take a sample of the densely packed cellulose insulation to see the extent of the water intrusion. Now, my logical side of my brain knew this was probably all the case, and my lizard brain did finally calm down. But jokes aside, weather is always something you have to contend with, no matter what kind of construction you're doing at some point. Over the course of that day, they finished out all the roof trusses and had things set up to finish out the following week. That's when they finished installing all the roof sheathing and taped all the joints to get everything water and air tight. I wasn't there for the first half of the week to get that on video, but I did show up on Thursday for the blower door test. And for me, this was the first major milestone of our project that my wife and I started almost 2 years ago. And it's not that it took Unity 2 years, but from the time that we decided to build a house, started our search for some land to build it on, then the pandemic struck and slowed things way down. Now, I've talked about net zero energy homes and buildings, as well as passive house standards in a lot of my videos. And just in case some of you watching aren't familiar with passive house, it's a building standard that was created in Germany back in the mid-1990s. If your building is passive house certified, you can expect up to a 90% reduction in heating and cooling costs compared to a conventional building in the US, and over 75% in relation to an average new building here in the US. The basic tenets are a highly insulated envelope, which this house is going to have. The building should be as free from thermal bridging as much as possible because heat moves to where it's colder, so the heat inside the building will always try to move outside if it's colder, using the easiest path it can find. Thermal bridges help the heat move between those two zones. A house's studs can act as a thermal bridge. I can't say Unity homes are thermal bridge free, but they've accounted for as much of that as they can in their design, and you should check out my previous video if you want to hear more about that. Next up is high performance windows and doors, which again, this house has. They use triple glazed tilt-turn windows from Logic, which have a U factor of 0.15 and 0.13, or an R value between 6.7 and 7.7 based on the model. All of that leads me to the final aspects of a passive house, and my house, the airtight envelope and mechanical ventilation, meaning having an ERV that's circulating fresh air into the house and exhausting stale air outside of the house while recovering the heat. Leaks around doors, windows, exterior outlets, hose bibs, sill plates, they can all be extremely leaky. Sealing off a house and making it as airtight as possible helps to reduce the heat loss or heat intrusion. One of Unity's final steps after they've assembled the shell of the house is to test it for air tightness with a blower door test. And it looks like you probably imagine. It's a fan that gets attached to an open doorway in your home. After calibrating it, the fan pulls air out of the house, which lowers the air pressure inside. Higher outside pressure then tries to get into the house through unsealed gaps. The test is run at 50 pascals of pressure differential between the inside and outside of the house, and the blower door measures that leakage as air changes per hour, or ACH. To achieve passive house standard, you have to be at 0.6 or lower air changes per hour at 50 pascals of pressure. The lower the number, the better. So how did my blower test go for this? Well, not so good for the first attempt, but that's expected. Sometimes they have little leaks that they have to track down. On the first test, they weren't even close, but it was awesome to see the entire team jump into action to try to track down where the leaks might be. They started with some of the more obvious potential spots, like the doorway into my studio that was blocked off with a piece of wood. They also used a thermal camera to look around door frames and windows, as well as checking the tape that was sealing the membrane into the attic space. They were checking everywhere, and the second test they ran also failed. Nobody was panicking, but the search continued. I was having a side conversation with a few people when one of the guys checked the logic side door out of the house, which made a loud click when he tested the door handle. It wasn't completely latched shut. I didn't get it on camera, but as he walked away from the door, he just muttered to himself, "Well, that'll do it." After the third test, they hit a 0.54 air changes per hour. And when they announced that, I actually applauded. Yep, I'm that guy. I also didn't get that on camera, and I really wish I had. Unity got the house fully assembled on site in about 9 days, including the prep time. It only took about 3 days to raise the entire shell. Now, the second day I was there, I was out front filming, and a couple of my neighbors walked by and were shocked at how fast the house just, direct quote, showed up. At this point, the house is watertight, airtight, and ready for finishing, which my local contractor is taking over at this point. We're also going to be doing more blower door tests as finishing progresses to make sure that we're holding steady or getting better. I'm still a distance away from being able to move in, but there's still a lot to come. I'm getting a geothermal heating and cooling system installed, solar panels and a home battery, and a bunch of smart home tech to automate a lot of this stuff together. I'm planning on more videos, but let me know if there's a particular aspect of my house build that you'd like to see. It's a fascinating process that I'm going through, and I can't wait to share more of it with you. And when it's all done, I'm going to go through some of the pros and cons of the experience as well. So what do you think about the factory built process so far? Jump in the comments and let me know. And be sure to check out my follow-up podcast, Still to be Determined, where we'll be discussing some of your feedback. If you liked this video, be sure to check out one of the ones over here. And thanks to all of my patrons who get ad-free versions of every video for your continued support. And welcome to new Supporter Plus members Andrew Wilson, Trent Lyon, and Jeremy. You're helping to reduce my dependence on YouTube to pay for producing these videos. And thanks to all of you for watching and commenting. I'll see you in the next one.